If you love silent movies, why not take a little road trip to the Columbus Moving Picture Show, May 21st through 24th at the Crowne Plaza North in Columbus, Ohio. There you can enjoy 8 silent film programs over 4 days, each with live piano scores by accompanists with decades of experience, including David Drazen, whose jazzy style will perk you up and keep you engaged, or Dr. Philip Carley, whose experience playing at the George Eastman House and festivals like the San Francisco Silent Film Festival, Pordenone, and Capitol Fest makes him one of the best traveled accompanists in the business. Among the screenings will be Nell Gwynn starring Dorothy Gish as the Restoration-era actress who seduced King Charles II in England. Our Dancing Daughters starring Joan Crawford and Anita Page as flappers in the Roaring Twenties with an introduction by Crawford biographer Scott Eyman. Love starring real-life lovers Greta Garbo and John Gilbert in a silent film adaptation of Tolstoy's Anna Karenina, introduced by Garbo relative and biographer Scott Ricefield. And a recently rediscovered comedy once thought to be lost called Taxi Taxi, starring Edward Everett Horton and Marion Nixon, with an introduction by Nixon and Laura LaPlante biographer Laura Geralds. In addition to the excellent 16mm film presentations, we have seminars on a variety of subjects like Casablanca, Bette Davis, and Alfred Hitchcock's association with composer Bernard Herrmann, conducted by experts, and the biggest gathering of movie memorabilia in the country, spread over more than 100 dealer tables. Buy vintage movie posters dating all the way back to the silent era, autographs, stills, press books, records, toys, 16mm film, DVDs, Blu-rays, and more. Did I mention a 4-day pass is only $75 if you buy in advance on our website, columbusmovingpictureshow.com? We believe that silent films are best enjoyed the way they were originally, on real film with a live audience and great live musical accompaniment. We hope to see you there.
Hello everyone and welcome to the more shortish form content from the Golden Silent Films podcast, where we're going to bring you another tale of live silent film adventures experienced by us. As 2026 has progressed and the weather has gotten warmer, we have been hot on the trail of the coolest silent film experiences around Pittsburgh. Now this live event, film screening, and discussion about the history of Italian immigration and its depiction on film really excited us here at the home office. Though we have already gone in depth about 1915's The Italian, we couldn't pass up this chance to do a super cool follow-up for that film that I think all of you fine listeners out there will really enjoy and see the movie from a different perspective. Also, considering this year we are focusing on the life of an Italian immigrant, Rudolph Valentino, this was a can't-miss opportunity. Through this spotlight film, The Italian, and the great panel of speakers on hand, we were able to walk away with new perspectives in which to view the Italian immigration from that era, which in turn provided a new outlook on the life of the Latin lover himself. If you are unaware, for any and all show updates, news of what's going on and where the Golden Silent Films podcast is going to be going, follow us on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Twitter or X. As usual, head on over to Golden Silence Cast on Instagram and Blue Sky for up-to-date info on this little podcast. And for all of you folks on X or Twitter, just follow at Golden Silence 1 or just search for Golden Silence Cast and we should turn up pretty quickly. All of these screen names and sites will be in the episode description in case you are interested in checking us out. As always, we would love to have you on board. At these social spaces, you're going to get behind the scenes pics and info, upcoming episode reveals, and other fun film-related materials. And as always, fun photos of our bellissimo podcasts, Gizmo and Soda. Also, if you're listening to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or Amazon Music, please leave comments, reviews, ratings, or all of the above. Our show has been around for over 6 years now, and we're only at 23 reviews on iTunes. We would love to see those numbers keep growing, and you live event attending silent film fans out there can definitely make it happen. All of those ratings and reviews help so much. So, on that note, live your best review-leaving life and help our show grow and reach fellow silent film fans. Dropping those reviews gives us more exposure in the world of podcasts and lets us know how we can improve the show. As always, we are so incredibly grateful for the feedback and always want to bring you the best show humanly possible. And please subscribe to the Golden Silent Films podcast. While our output can be a bit sketchy and irregular at times, if you're subscribed, you will never miss an episode, and the moment new content drops, it'll go straight to your listening device of choice. We are well into our 6th season and don't want you to miss a minute. Oh, and if you're listening on YouTube, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. It means so much to our growing channel. We are always and seemingly eternally shooting for 100 subscribers, and with one button press, you fine folks out there can do your part and get us one step closer. So for this episode, we will be staying incredibly close to home and visiting one of the coolest historical sites in the already incredibly historical city of Pittsburgh. If I've said it once, I've said it many, many times. The Frick Museum is one of my favorite venues to catch a silent film in Pittsburgh. It was even more special this afternoon. Here in Pittsburgh, we have had an especially cold and dark and terrible winter, with an incredibly fair amount of snow tossed in for a little bit of extra chaos from here and there. Now, this special screening of The Italian was taking place at the Frick at 2 p.m. on Sunday, March 8th, 2026. And really, you could not have asked for a more beautiful day. It was one of those days that really reignites the spirit after months and months of cold, gloomy, and overall generally depressing weather. As we drove through town, it was so refreshing seeing so many folks out and about taking advantage of this perfect weather. Also, even though we are firmly a pro-cat podcast, it was awesome seeing so many dogs out and about and enjoying the afternoon with their owners as well. Now, longtime listeners of the show will recognize the name of the Frick from past episodes. We have done live screening coverage from 2 Frick buildings throughout the city of Pittsburgh. Between Frick and Carnegie, it's pretty easy to be confused and mixed up as to which historic building we are at any given screening. Now, this event, and I say event because it was so much more than just a showing of a silent film. This screening, this event of The Italian at the Frick could not have gone down at a better venue. The Frick Pittsburgh really is an unbelievable location for way more reasons than just the occasional silent movie screening. From priceless art pieces to fleets of historic automobiles, there really is something for every history lover out there, and all of that is just the tip of the iceberg. Now, the Frick Pittsburgh is located in the Point Breeze neighborhood of Pittsburgh. This is not to be confused with the Frick Fine Arts building on the campus of the University of Pittsburgh. That venue is super cool on its own merits, and it's a place we have discussed on multiple occasions here on the podcast. And spoiler alert, we actually have another screening at the Frick Fine Arts building to talk about, so stay tuned to hear all about it in a future episode. But back to the Frick of this episode's focus. There are several components to the overall property to be enthralled by. Around every corner, there is something to capture your interest. First, there is Clayton Mansion. Before it was a mansion, it was originally an 11-room house, appropriately enough, built in the Italianate style. Interestingly enough, much like the film, Italianate style was not born of Italy. Though developed in Britain, it was inspired by Italian flair. The large house was purchased in 1881, remodeled into a larger 23-room mansion, which served as the Frick family home from 1883 to 1905. It was opened to the public in 1990 after being preserved by Helen Clay Frick. It was a wild road that brought the Frick to the people of Pittsburgh. According to the Frick website at frick.org, we read, "After the death of her father in 1919, Helen Clay Frick focused her attention on the Frick Collection. The museum comprised of Henry Clay Frick's New York residence and art collection, which had been established by his will. Along with her mother and her brother, Childs Frick, Helen Clay Frick served as the founding trustee of the collection and was instrumental in guiding the museum's early acquisitions. In 1920, she established the Frick Art Reference Library in New York as a memorial to her father and as a public resource for those with an interest in art history. She served as director of the library from its inception until shortly before her death." Now that sets a bit of the stage and is all to set up the fact that her duties to the preservation of art and history would not be confined to New York. The article continues, "Outside of New York, Helen Clay Frick worked with officials at the University of Pittsburgh to create an academic department in art history, which was founded in 1926. In the 1960s, she provided funds to construct the Henry Clay Frick Fine Arts Building to house the department and its library. Subsequent disagreements with the university, however, compelled her to withdraw her support, and in 1970, she built the Frick Art Museum on the grounds at Clayton to house her personal art collection. Helen Clay Frick never married and had no children. She died at Clayton in 1984. Now, my personal favorite place in the whole Frick Art Museum is the literal art museum. This part of the exhibition experience was established by the aforementioned Helen Clay Frick. This museum houses her personal collection of fine and decorative arts, with an especial focus on 18th century French and early Italian Renaissance pieces, appropriately enough. The site, though, has been an ever-evolving entity. It started with the Clayton expansion in the 1880s and has been going ever since. In 1997, another expansion to the site brought the awesome Car and Carriage Museum into existence. After that, a $15 million renovation added a community and education center. With the local Pittsburgh history detour behind us, let's focus on this screening of 1915's The Italian with live musical accompaniment. Over our 6 years on the air, we have covered a lot of silent movies, and many of those have been viewed from the comfort of home. A lot of those films I could totally picture being shown on a big screen. But having the opportunity to catch The Italian on a big screen with a nearly sold-out Frick Museum audience was definitely one I did not have on my bingo card. Now, the Golden Silent Films podcast is built on bringing recognition to some of the lesser-known stories, personalities, and films of the silent era. So seeing a nearly max capacity, super eager and enthusiastic audience waiting to see a movie like The Italian felt so good. This film was deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant by the United States Library of Congress and selected for preservation in the National Film Registry in 1991. So this is technically not an unknown film, but it's definitely a bit of a hidden gem. Now, there was another reason I was really excited to see this movie again, and it was a bit selfish, I must admit. It was because we covered this film during our World Tour 24 season. It was a rare moment that I felt ahead of the curve. For that reason, I'm not going to go super in-depth with the film's plot and such, so if you want some of that information, feel free to download that episode from our back catalog and give it a listen. That original episode dives more into the life of star George Beben and the story of Italian immigration from a national, more bigger picture perspective. So, with that scene set and painted, and the past podcast episodes advertised, let's focus on this particular screening and the knowledgeable panel that put this film into perspective for all of us. First up was Chad Hunter of the Pittsburgh Silent Film Society. As usual, he brought great film facts and context surrounding the production of this film. Whether it was insight into camera techniques or a quick bio on movie mogul Thomas Ince, Hunter provided a great intro that allowed for a deeper understanding of this featured film. Where Chad Hunter gave great movie info, the next guest speaker of the afternoon was able to bring a historical perspective to the film. The Frick website gives a great introduction about this event, writing, "This special program traces themes of immigration, identity, and visual storytelling across photography and early film, enriched by historical insights and example of archival materials from the Heinz History Center's Italian-American collection." So on hand from the aforementioned Heinz History Center was Melissa Marinaro, director of the aforementioned Italian-American program, to explain the real-world Italian immigration that we see on screen throughout the Italian. Melissa brought some legit bona fides and credentials to the proceedings. It was really cool to see on screen artifacts and pieces of Italian history. From paperwork to photographs, it really brought the experience to another level. I do have to say I have been to the Heinz History Center and spent a fair amount of time exploring the museum's Italian-American collection. It's an incredible exhibit to see, and it really shines a light on Italian-Americans and their impact on the country, and more specifically Pittsburgh. I can vouch that it is definitely worth checking out for yourself. Seeing pieces of that history up close really puts it all into perspective, and seeing how it affected Pittsburgh and weaves such a cool historic tapestry really made the experience of seeing it hit home. Hearing about what Italian immigrants went through in real life gives a viewer of 1915's The Italian a whole new lens with which to view the film. It hits differently knowing what was cinematic and what was true to the immigrant journey. I was lucky enough to attend this screening with my partner Raffaella, who is an Italian immigrant herself. The screening led to great conversation in comparing what we saw about Italian immigration in the early 1900s as opposed to the late 70s when she arrived in Pittsburgh. Before we delve into the immigration talk and historical analysis, I also have to shout out a third member of the on-hand trio, Eric Cook of the Pittsburgh Film Orchestra. His accompaniment to the film was terrific and really set the scene for the film at hand. He also brought another great perspective to the analysis of the film, that being the musical side. Together, all three made this event something unforgettable. Now, The Italian isn't the most famous movie ever made, nor does it feature any megastars that moviegoers of today would know. It may not stand out in 2026, but what it does do incredibly well is facilitate discussion, which is all you can ask for from a 111-year-old film. However, since we are in the midst of a Valentino-centric season of podcasts, I wanted to relate some information I found while researching the life of Rudolph Valentino. There wasn't really any good spots to drop this info into other episodes, the way it kind of worked out with scheduling and the topics I was covering, but since we are discussing Italian immigration here in the teens and 20s, there seemed like no better time or place. In her book Dark Lover, The Life and Death of Rudolph Valentino, author Emily W. Leiter takes readers on a journey through time that expands way past just the life of the Hollywood megastar. In fact, she takes us through a lot of context-setting history. One major point is the arrival of young Rudolfo to the United States aboard the SS Cleveland in December of 1913. Leiter writes, although the Federal Bureau of Immigration's open-door policy had been allowing thousands of Italians, nearly 300,000 the year Valentino arrived, to settle in the United States since the 1880s, there was pressure from quote-unquote old-stock Americans whose forebears had arrived during colonial times to slam the door shut. Leiter continues, the privileged wanted assurances that only the, quote, right sort of immigrants would hereafter be allowed in. They agitated against, quote, racial aliens and defended a narrow, nativist definition of American tradition based on a belief in the superiority of Anglo-Saxon attitudes and ancestry. Biased against the uneducated and the non-white, they pushed for a literacy test as a ticket of admission. Some laborers, too, resented the Southern and Eastern European newcomers, blaming them for taking all the unskilled jobs and being willing to work for less than a living wage. So as we'll hear later in this episode from Melissa Marinaro, the world was not especially kind to Italian immigrants of the day. Whether it was in film or real life, public opinion often stood in opposition to the immigrant. We've talked about this kind of thing during the Valentino season of the podcast. Early in his career, the only roles available to the up-and-coming actor were those of bad guys and heavies, and not so much the heroes of the picture. Now, The Italian, as we've talked about in the past, kind of walked that line. It was cool to hear about George Beben's performances from another perspective, from a more historical perspective. Now, before we hear more from Melissa, I want to quote Emily Leiter one last time in relation to the public view of the Italian immigrant. Now, this next bit really ties in nicely to the stuff I've learned as a result of this screening, its speakers, and some additional research and reading. Emily Leiter explains, Italians in particular found themselves disparaged as swarthy criminal types, supposedly devious, prone to explosions of violence, and ruled by the mafia or the Black Hand. A 1913 film, Italian Blood, focused on an Italian husband's insane jealousy. American slang contained ugly, dehumanizing epithets for Italians. When distinctions were made among Italians, those from the South got the short end of the stick. Many Americans, as well as northern Italians, automatically assumed that if you were Southern Italian, you had to be poor, uneducated, and inclined to settle arguments with a stiletto. So all of that is to set the scene for my chat with Melissa Marinaro about the Italian immigrant experience in The Italian and how it jived with the real-world counterpart. So as I mentioned earlier, we have some great insight into this film and the overall story of Italian immigration from Melissa Marinaro, the director of the Italian-American program at the Heinz History Center. She had so much great information for all of the attendees at that wonderful screening. In fact, it was so good I had to go straight to the source and give you fine listeners some of that fine info. Now, Melissa is very, very busy with her duties at the museum, but she was incredibly kind to provide some great insights over the course of some good old-fashioned electronic mail discourse. Now, the first question I had, obviously being Steel City-centric. Since this is a Pittsburgh-based podcast, I asked Melissa to tell us a little bit about the Italian immigration into Pittsburgh in the teens and 20s. Now, I covered the national angle on my earlier episode about the Italian, but I really wanted to hear about the Pittsburgh perspective. And Melissa told me, Italians began to settle in the region as early as 1873, and by 1900, the population of Italian-born residents was significant in Allegheny County, especially in the city of Pittsburgh. Italians came to Pittsburgh from all over Italy, not just the Italian South, and people settled in communities where they had family and or neighbors from their villages. The phenomenon of one person influencing their family and friends to join them in a host country is called chain migration. Not all Italian immigrants plan to settle permanently in the United States, and it's estimated that half of them return to Italy. Now today, roughly 15% of people in Allegheny County claim Italian ancestry. Now I personally can speak to that from experience with loved ones who immigrated from Italy in the 1970s. Someone would come to Pittsburgh or Canada, and the members of the family remaining in Italy eventually followed. Melissa added, Pittsburgh neighborhoods near the city center, such as the Lower Hill District, the Bluff, Strip District, North Side, and Mount Washington, were home to Italian immigrants who worked as laborers and hucksters. In the East End, Larimer was the home to the highest concentration of Italian immigrants, and until the 1960s, it was known as Pittsburgh's Little Italy. By the 1910s and 20s, Italian immigrants settled in Manchester, Woods Run, Bloomfield, Panther Hollow, South Oakland, Homewood, Brushton, Lincoln Leamington, Beachview, Brookline, Beltoover, Knoxville, and Hayes. As Italians embedded themselves into American society, they developed infrastructure in their communities, such as small businesses, churches, mutual aid societies, and social clubs. In the Pittsburgh region, some of these infrastructures still exist. Businesses such as Pennsylvania Macaroni in the Strip, Moranti's Groceria in South Oakland, Labriola's Italian Market in Monroeville, Aspinwall, and Wexford, and Moyo's Italian Pastry Shop in Monroeville, and organizations such as the Italian Sons and Daughters of America, the Sons of Italy, and the Spigno Saturnia Society in Morningside. Now, the next thing I had to ask Melissa concerned the world-famous Heinz History Center here in Pittsburgh. Like I said, I've been to the Heinz History Center and really loved exploring the Italian-American collection in amongst all the other really cool stuff in the museum. One other super cool thing is that my partner has a personal connection to one of the items on display. It was an unexpected discovery that really brought the experience much closer. Now, I asked Melissa, for anyone who's never been, to tell us a little bit about it and the exhibit and what people can expect when they experience it. Melissa told me, the History Center's Italian-American program was established at the museum in 1990 to document, preserve, interpret, and disseminate the history and culture of Italian Americans in Western Pennsylvania. We have built one of the largest collections of material culture about Italian Americans in the United States, and our collection is comprised of three-dimensional objects, such as tools, textiles, decorative objects, artwork, and devotional items, paper-based archives such as vital documents, correspondence, first-person accounts, photographs, and records from the mutual beneficial societies, and oral histories with first, second, and third generation Italian Americans. As a regular visitor personally to the Heinz History Center, I can back up what Melissa says about the varied and diverse nature of the collection and how it is incredibly powerful on a lot of different levels. Now, Melissa, thankfully, takes us into that incredible collection in a more detailed way than I could ever hope to explain. Melissa told me, our collections document many aspects of the Italian-American experience. Immigration to the United States, domestic life, labor, foodways, cultural practices, and assimilation. Items from our artifact collection are scattered throughout the museum's exhibitions, though there is one area on our fourth floor special collections gallery where you can see a concentration of objects representing the region's historic Italian-American community, and it's located behind the Mr. Rogers display, which I love also. Now, as cool as this collection is, the Italian-American program at the Heinz History Center is so much more than just things to look at and read about. Those items are just the tip of the immigration story iceberg. Of course, I had to have Melissa take us into the wonderful programs provided by the Italian-American program. Melissa explained, besides the artifact and archival collections, which are central to the mission of the Italian-American program, we also produce public programming and engage in educational and community outreach to share the history of Western Pennsylvania's Italian Americans with audiences throughout the region and across the nation. This is one of the ways that we activate the collection and create awareness about its existence. To keep up with the activities of the Italian American program, feel free to sign up for the program's mailing list to learn about upcoming program and outreach. It's also a great way to learn about collections not on display as we highlight an object in every issue. Now, me as a podcaster, as a museum goer, as someone who has given introduction to several silent films over the years, I can speak to the fact that, nerves aside, it really is a great experience. You know, folks are attending for the love of film. I don't have nearly the width or breadth of knowledge that Melissa has, so it must have been a cool experience to share those great insights with an enthusiastic crowd. So, naturally, I had to ask her what it felt like presenting in front of such a great audience of both film and history lovers. I always appreciate the opportunity to share Italian American history with diverse audiences, especially an audience that is already engaged with arts and media, Melissa told me over the email. Presenting in conjunction with the Frick screening of The Italian gave me the opportunity to use the film as an entry point to discuss Italian immigration in the early 20th century. Considering this film was made about an Italian immigrant during the height of Italian immigration to the United States, it offered a rich platform to discuss not only this moment in American history, but also American attitudes towards immigration, how they influenced legislative policy, and the way that artists responded in their respective media. I think the screening lent itself to an engaging conversation between myself, Chad Hunter of the Pittsburgh Silent Film Society, and Eric Cook of the Pittsburgh Film Orchestra, as we each brought a different interpretive angle to the film. Now, The Italian, I believe, was a well-intentioned attempt to portray a positive look at Italian immigrants. Whether it ultimately did or didn't is more up for debate. There are definitely some problematic portions of the film, no doubt, and that is my opinion as a viewer of the film. I was super curious to see what Melissa, as a historian, felt about the portrayal in question. So I asked her, what place do you feel The Italian occupies, for better or worse, in the story of Italian immigration to the United States? Looking back at the screening itself, in an incredibly detailed presentation, Melissa was able to really tie George Beben's work to the image of the Italian immigrant. In the email, she told me, The Italian features a fictionalized portrayal of an Italian immigrant by American actor George Beben, who gained acclaim on stage and in film by portraying what was referred to as the Italian type. He said to a reporter from the Los Angeles Times, "To portray the type of Italian that I do, all one needs is knowledge of the actions, mannerisms, etc. of the character. I Americanize him for the United States consumption stage purposes." In a Pittsburgh Post review of the film, The Sign of the Rose, another feature from 1915 where Beben portrays an Italian immigrant, the author stated, "George Beben's work in Italian characterizations has won for him a unique position as an actor. In his gestures, his walk, and the expression of his face, he succeeds wonderfully in portraying the Italian laborer. He based his performance of the Italian type from his study of Italian gardeners and grape growers during his childhood in the San Francisco Bay Area, and his later observations of Italian laborers in Manhattan and New Jersey." Melissa added, "Today, more than 100 years later, I understand Beben's performance to be an ethnic character informed by American attitudes towards Italian immigrants. The notion of the Italian type is rooted in scientific racism, a pseudoscience debunked in the mid-20th century that created a hierarchy of races and ethnicities for the purpose of justifying racial superiority or inferiority. Italians in the United States were categorized by the Bureau of Immigration into two types, the Northern Italian and the Southern Italian. Alfredo Nicefero, an Italian sociologist, described the South Italian as excitable, impulsive, highly imaginative, and practicable, having little ability to adapt to highly organized society. In contrast, he described the North Italian as cool, deliberate, patient, practical, and capable of great progress in the political and social organizations of modern civilization. In the Dictionary of Races or Peoples, a 1911 publication produced by the Dillingham Commission, a congressional bipartisan commission on immigration that later informed the 1921 and 1924 immigration quotas, quotes Nicefero's assessment in their entry on the Italian race, echoing his conclusions that Southern Italians are prone to violent or criminal behavior, citing their tendency towards the vendetta. The entry also comments on their lack of education, high rates of illiteracy, and high birth rates. Speaking of the differences of northern and southern Italy and the stereotypes attached to them, to this day, my household holds a solid and special disdain for Stanley Tucci for calling the Calabria region of southern Italy, and I quote, "a place that's as troubled as it is beautiful." Knowing people from Calabria who've been back to Calabria recently, this bit really irked us and made the Tucci a name not to be mentioned in polite society. Every other region of Italy that he covered in Stanley Tucci's Searching for Italy was talked about in high regard and beauty and the culture. but Calabria was looked at as dangerous. And he's from Calabria, and he is continuing these southern Italy stereotypes, which we were not happy with, not at all. But let's go away from tours of Italy, and let's get back to some of the more nuanced and problematic bits of the film The Italian, and George Beben's depiction of Beppo Dinetti. In our previous episode, breaking down The Italian, I saw some problems in portions of the narrative and characterizations. But after attending this screening and talking more in depth with Melissa, I realized I was out of my league and really missed quite a bit of the damaging moments, scenes, and portrayals. Melissa was able to, with her deep knowledge in history and experience in learning about this stuff, she opened my eyes to a lot of moments that I missed on my first viewings. Melissa writes, "While Beben's performance of Beppo Dinetti was more sympathetic than those of his vaudevillian peers, it leaned heavily into the period stereotyping of Italians. Italian-American media historian Giorgio Bertelli wrote in his essay Black Hands and White Hearts for the book Mob Culture, Hidden Histories of the American Gangster on Film, about the character Beben portrays. He writes, "Despite his good heart, the Italian implies Beppo did not hesitate to obey the pressing law of his race, which called for a violent personal vendetta. Behind the facade of a suffering father still lurked the Italian nature of a violent man. The film denies him not only the right to express his rebellion and avenge himself, but also his right to justice. Because Beben's performance was presented in a new form of American media, the silent film, its broad distribution had the capacity to stoke the fears and biases of xenophobic citizens, just as it had the potential to soften Americans' view of Italian immigrants." So far in this episode, Melissa Marinaro has been incredibly gracious and helpful in revisiting the 1915 film The Italian with us. She has really radically changed a lot of the views and opinions I had in relation to this picture. It's opportunities like that that make doing this podcast so eye-opening and horizon-expanding. Despite having a podcast dedicated to silent film, it doesn't mean I know everything about silent film or history. I'm always learning. My thoughts and opinions have changed and evolved over time, which is all I can ask for at the end of the day. This journey of learning and discovery truly never ends, whether it's in life or podcast creation. As I wrapped up my time with Melissa, I had one last question. Well, not so much a question, but I wanted her final thoughts on The Italian and what it meant to Italian immigration to the United States. For all its faults, she told me, Beben's portrayal of Beppo Dinetti as a multidimensional and compassionate figure offered American audiences a nuanced depiction that acknowledged the humanity of the immigrant experience, something that was missing from American media in 1915. The Italian serves as a reminder of a moment in our collective history, how far we have come in our fictional depictions of the immigrant experience on screen, and how far we have yet to go to present immigrant stories on film with equitable casting and directing, diverse storytelling, and accurate reflections of global cultures. Now, this has been an incredibly awesome experience chatting with Melissa Marinaro. I cannot thank her enough for being so open and receptive to all of my questions. She is no doubt incredibly busy, so I want to thank her on behalf of the Golden Silent Films podcast and on behalf of all of you fine listeners out there. It has been a joy and super enlightening diving into The Italian once again. Now, one of the best ways to show your appreciation to Melissa Marinaro and all the great work she's doing is to visit the Italian American program at the Heinz History Center. There are so many cool pieces of history telling the story of Italian immigration to the United States and Pittsburgh in particular. If you want more information on the Heinz History Center, look no further than www.heinzhistorycenter.org. I know we will be back to the Heinz History Center soon and hope to see all of you fine folks out there as well. Now, as we wrap up this great episode and amazing screening event, it's only appropriate that we end with a look back at Helen Clay Frick and her love of art. A love that has endured and, as you just heard, continues to this day with great silent film events at the Frick. Turning to the Frick.org website, we read, "From an early age, Helen Clay Frick expressed an interest in art, and she created an early 2-volume catalog of her father's collection from 1909 to 1910. She traveled abroad frequently with her family and maintained detailed diaries from several of these trips, noting visits to galleries, museums, and historical sites. She was also interested in photography and kept a visual record of her travels through scrapbooks and photographic albums. Her love of art was indisputable, and the fact that the Frick Pittsburgh keeps that commitment to art alive to this day is really, really incredible. So, with the episode coming to a close, we want to thank you for spending your valuable film discussion time with us. This has been a ton of fun taking a deeper dive into this 110-year-old classic. There is so much great historical nuance to learn from this movie, so we were more than happy to return to talking about The Italian. I believe this is the first naturally occurring follow-up episode, so this has been an exciting first. Did you enjoy this broader look at Italian immigration? What are your favorite films depicting the immigrant experience? Have you had a favorite film-going experience at this or any other Frick location? Tell us your stories. Let us know all those details at the various social media entry points of the Golden Silent Films podcast. So on that note, if you have forgotten, we are on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Twitter. Let us know what you think of this episode. What silent and silent-related movies, past or present, do you want us to look at next? Our world of silent film knowledge and experience is constantly expanding, and we need your input for our future episodes here and beyond. And what great screening events do you want us to go to next? Again, if you listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or any other podcast outlet that allows it, subscribe, rate, and review. If you're watching it on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment, and hit that bell for notification. It does a lot for our visibility here, and we love hearing your thoughts and ideas. We have a goal set of getting our YouTube subscriber count to 100 during the year of 2026, so please subscribe and spread the word so other cool folks can subscribe as well. We really, really appreciate all of your incredible support, and seeing how much you folks out there are listening on all of our many platforms only makes us want to make the best show humanly possible. Season 6 is off to an amazing start, and we still have a ton of great content coming your way, with a special emphasis on one Italian immigrant in particular, Rudolph Valentino. So, with all that being said, thank you to all of you fine listeners for all of your fine listening. And don't forget, the silents are golden, and the talkies, they're just a fad.